Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to yet another episode of the Sports Creative Showcase. My name is Juan, and as usual, I'm bringing you this show, this podcast, in order to introduce you guys to some of the most talented, some of the most groundbreaking creatives working in the sports industry right now. And today's episode is a very special one with a very good friend of mine that I've known for quite a while now, someone who I've worked directly one-on-one with in the trenches in the hockey world, and that is my friend Akim Burke, who is the current video producer for the PWHL Toronto Sceptres hockey team here in Toronto, Ontario. Akim is an incredibly talented person, someone who is very, very humble, and also really just generally one of the nicest human beings I've ever had the pleasure of meeting. Now, I'm going to let Akim introduce himself in the episode here very, very soon, but I just want to hop on really quickly before to say a few things. Number one, thank you guys so much for watching and listening to the show so far. I just checked our podcast stream stats right now, and we have over 2,000 plays, which for me means a lot. I put a lot of effort into these episodes with scheduling guests, shooting them, editing them, and I'm really glad that this longer form of content has resonated with so many of you. So if you've been someone who has listened to one episode or all of them, thank you guys so much. Please make sure that if you guys want to keep seeing more of this, leave me comments on the YouTube video, leave me a rating on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or wherever you're listening to, as it really motivates me to keep this show going, and it helps me present it to potential guests who want to come on as something that can teach and impact a lot of people in this industry. Secondly, I just want to mention that in this episode, there were a few audio technical difficulties. I don't know what happened. I think it might have been my connection from Akim's microphone to my recorder, but there is some strange scratching noises, and it's not coming from his microphone. It's not coming from mine. So I have a feeling there was something going on with the cable connection to his microphone. So I just want to apologize for that. I want to reassure you that this is only for the first part of the episode, for like at least the first 3 or 4 minutes, and then somehow it clears it up. I did my best to adjust this in post to fix it as much as possible. I couldn't get rid of all of it, unfortunately, as you're going to notice, but just asking you, bear with me. This episode is chock full of so many fantastic tips for any sports creatives, but especially those who are just trying to find their first opportunities, find their first steps in shooting sports, and also for anyone who wants to work in hockey at the highest level. Akim's journey is a perfect example of how to start from the bottom up, how to really start reaching out, finding those opportunities on your own, merit, and working your way up to working to the professional level. With that all being said, thank you guys so much for tuning in, and I hope you guys enjoy today's episode. This is the third time I'm doing the intro to this podcast because the audio wasn't rolling the last few times, even though I checked. Welcome to episode 17 of the Sports Creative Showcase. To my right is a very talented guest. Everyone here is talented, but Akim is someone I've known for a while, and we've been planning on doing this for a while. Akim Burke is an incredibly talented videographer, producer, director, etc. And you are currently with the PWHL Toronto. You've run the gamut with a lot of different things in your career, from the PWHL, MLSE. Akim, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
I am fantastic. It's a great summer day. We're enjoying a little bit of relaxation before our seasons get really up and running. So
yeah, it's off season for both of us. We got some time off. I just got on vacation. You were away for a little bit. Now we're back.
Yeah, so I'm just enjoying some of like the slow ramp up. And then just happy to finally be able to jump on the podcast.
Chop it up. No, good to hear that you took your time off. You're kind of chilling before the summer ends, because this is basically both of our breaks. For the people who don't know you, I know I just gave a little bit of an intro as to who you are and what you do, but can you give the audience an idea of who you are and what you do?
Kind of like what Juan says. I've done a little bit of everything. I started kind of like the second chapter of my career in 2019. Kind of like when I moved back to Vancouver, was starting from the bottom of the barrel. Yep. You know what I mean? So came back, had like no money in my pocket, and started trying to do as many small businesses, photography. I was doing Airbnb experiences.
No way. Yeah. I actually didn't know you were doing Airbnb stuff. Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah, no, I was doing that in Vancouver, like doing engagement shoots, doing like little walk around shoots for people, just to kind of get the practice of, get your reps in. Yeah, get the reps in, but also it was a great way for me to also like network and meet a lot of new people. And then when I came back to Toronto, I kind of started from ground zero, no money, no job, no prospects. I didn't have work for about 6 months. And then my first gig was with a semi-pro volleyball league at the time. And then it just kind of started snowballing from there. Yeah.
Wow. So you went, like, when I met you, we were all pretty relatively fresh.
Yeah.
And now I think looking back, we met in 2020. Looking now back, we're in 2024, 4 years later. It's crazy to see the progression, not just from everybody in our group, especially from you, coming to Toronto, not having work, and then you started off with a volleyball league. I think that really speaks to like the concept of like, if you want to just start in this career path, you just have to do it. I'm sure you'll get a lot of people asking you, how'd you get your job with the PWHL? How did you do this? How did you do that? But it really is just a case of like picking up the camera and just doing the work.
Yeah, it was a very like slow burn and a lot of like, kind of like a zigzag way into the role now, right? Like I went from doing that semi-pro league to working at my old radio station again, to just kind of like get back into the media industry here in Toronto. And then while I was there, I was starting to figure out like, oh, is there some other opportunities, right? Like that's where I started going and shooting games for the OHL.
So we'll get to your story when it comes to the OHL in a minute, but I do want to touch on what you're doing right now with the PWHL. You just finished up your first season. You just confirmed that you're coming back for your second season. Congrats on that.
Thank you.
What can you kind of give a little detail as to what your role is with the PWHL, what you got up to this year? Because that was your main thing all year. That was your full-time job. And it must have, I was with you for a few games. We worked together on a few projects.
Yeah.
It was from, the outside looking in as like someone who was freelancing with the league. It was so cool to see women's hockey finally have the spotlight. As someone who was there from start to finish of this year, what was that experience like, and what did you get up to in your time with your first year with the league?
It was fantastic. Like our first year, like any first year of anything, it's just kind of like helter skelter,
growing pains, a lot of growing pains.
But what I tried to keep the focus on was just making sure our athletes had the best experience possible and we represented them and the team in the best way possible, right? Like as you said, like there have been a few different iterations of women's hockey leagues in the last, like I'd say 10 years or so.
Plus 10,
But this one really seemed like we were really going 10 toes in and really investing. And on my end, on my side of being like the team videographer, I just kind of felt like the focus should be on, there's just so many stories and so many players that we can really start to create a connection for, right? And so that's where, from our media day, like being able to really like you, myself, Nicole, sit down and kind of like really craft what that was going to look like. And you saw, like from the end result, obviously was fantastic. Definitely go check out our Instagram page for that. But you can see just the excitement in the players' eyes when they walked in on that hero set. And what is going on? You know what I mean? So,
I said it to you guys that day. It's just like, you don't realize like this is the first time a lot of these female athletes have had this experience. Like, especially, like the Natalie Spooners and the Sarah Nurses, they've been through the gamut. They've been doing this their whole careers because they are the top of the consummate pros. But you have your players who this is their first time playing professional. They never had the chance with the CWHL or the PHF, or this is their first time. So I think I remember like a lot of the girls who were rookies or first time playing at this level, they're getting the experience that they've never had before.
Yes.
And so I think that was such a unique thing. It's not just the media day, but like all freaking season. Like I remember when we were in the playoffs at Coca-Cola Coliseum, like that place was loud.
It was nuts.
And like you could see it. I remember getting the shot of them during the anthems on the ice. Like you can see it in their eyes. They're like, in Scotiabank Arena is the perfect example, dude. Like that is the first time any of them have played in a sold out 19,000 person arena. And that was such an incredible experience.
It was fantastic. And the reason why I had such a great time this year is because you could see, I spoke with our team photographer Heather about this all the time.
Shout out Heather, man. She's a go. She's a go, bro.
You could see in real time what this was, how this was affecting our audience, right? You could see in real time all the girls lined up along the glass with their signs, with their parents.
Dude, the little girls in the crowd who are just seeing their heroes. Like,
it's crazy. Like our first game of the season, technically of the league. You just saw, like, during our anthem, just tears right through the entire arena, because we were like, we had finally
figured it out
after
years of just BS.
1000%. And then Billie Jean King walks out to do our first puck drop, and you could just feel everyone just be like, yes, like, we got it.
Fucking
like,
finally, yeah.
Yes. And just being able to see that throughout the entire season, and just see our fan base get even more invested, like, game by game, video by video, comment by comment. It was really an experience that is one I'll definitely cherish for a very, very long time.
Amazing. No, dude, I totally agree. For people who aren't familiar, like myself, I used to work with the CWHL. So the predecessor to the two predecessors ago.
Is that NW? No.
It was so CWHL was Canada. Then they had the NWHL, which was the US league, and they never wanted to merge. CWHL folded in 2018.
Got you.
And then the NWHL became PHF, and then PHF folded, and now we're here. Yeah. But I mean, it is really incredible to see the progression of the women's game. And, you know, as someone who, I mean, you, like you said, you mentioned you worked with the OHL. I really don't think the NHL is too far from you at this point. Yeah. But I mean, it is very different when you see the collective work of a ton of people who care about the sport and care about the league come together and work like that. As the video producer for the PWHL Toronto, how did you find your role as someone who can tell these stories and put these women, these athletes in the spotlight? Like, how did you see your role, and what did you do to make sure that you were doing these athletes justice?
It's a ton of stress.
Oh yeah, sure. You're doing everything.
Yeah, you're doing everything, and kind of like you are the final stop in terms of, like, quality control, quality assurance, whatever you want to call it, but also to being able to craft stories that will resonate, that our players will enjoy being a part of, but also too are just a good reflection of our team and our league, right? So there's a lot of layers to that, and with that comes, you're just trying to do as much as you can in what little time you had. Like, it was a condensed season.
How many games did you guys play? Like 25, 20-ish?
25? I should know this. 24 games.
PWHL's gonna watch this like, this guy's losing his losing his job now. You don't know how many games you're fired, bro.
No, we had 12. Yeah, we had 12 home games, 12 away games. But it was, when you think of just the role and kind of like what you have to do is really be able to understand that you have to be invested, right? If you're not invested into what you're doing, it will show. The players will pick up on that, and it makes it so much harder for you to be able to develop that rapport over time, because you also have to understand, like, a lot of our staffers were people that have similar, like, to you, have worked with them, worked with a lot of these players over a ton of years, right? Over and with different teams, whereas I was kind of like the new guy coming in, and so I really wanted to show our players and our top tier staff that I was invested in not just the success of the team, but in our representation of the team. Yeah.
I think that just shows, though, like, like a league like that, especially a startup, it's interesting because I have the other perspective of being with the NHL, which has existed for over 100 years now, because we had a centennial season back in like 2015. Like, over 100 years, it's been around forever. Like, it's a big machine. Yeah. And then I've also, like, understand what it's like to be part of, like, a smaller machine. And you're saying it there, like, you have to showcase that you want to see success from you first, and then that bleeds through it, because when it's like that, it's like, it takes a village to build
100%.
And especially in its infancy, like, if you have to be on board, you have to show your intent to want to see this grow. And like you said, it bleeds through the players. And one of the most interesting parts for me this season was watching not just like the on ice product, but the girls' personalities and their ability to be marketable and their want and need to be on camera. And I'll say this, like, as someone who works in hockey, that's really rare. I love working with the NHL and I love working with our players, but a lot of them have been in the media realm for their entire life. So a lot of them are pretty like media trained. They know how to act in front of a camera. These girls are so excited to be on camera, to be part of the content. They were so excited for media day. Like, you developed really good relationships with them. How was that experience? Like getting to work with athletes who actively wanted to be in TikToks, be on the hype videos, be on Instagram content. How was that experience? And how did you kind of take that and take advantage of it to make better content?
Like, first of all, it was like 10 out of 10. Like, it was fantastic. It just makes your job that much more easier. But then also too, like any person is going to be on a different spectrum of that scale, right? Some might be like, I'll do a little bit of everything. Some might be like, let me know when you really need me, which is also totally fine, because then that helps you figure out what type of content is going to be good for each player.
Yeah, and it's also the diversification in terms of who's on camera. Like, you don't want like, don't get me wrong, like I love someone like Spoons, but I want to see there are other girls on the team. Like, I want to hear and make content. Like, let's say CJ, put CJ in front of the camera all day.
Well, 1000%.
But she's a good example of that.
Yes.
She's the one, like a person who wants to help market the team.
1000%. And CJ is a perfect example of understanding of how to, like, sorry, I should say in reverse. CJ is a great example of how we figured out how to market the rest of the team, right? Definitely there's a tons of points where we could improve on, for sure, but the goal for us was try to get as many people from player number 1 down to 26 that our fans either know their number, their name, their face, and be able to develop that kind of connection to them in some way, shape, or form, right? And that comes, like what you're saying, a lot of that storytelling, a lot of us getting to know what our players like, you know what I mean? What they're interested in. Like, if somebody's really into fishing, I'm not going to get them to do something that is like,
not
we're going to go shopping in a mall or something. You know what I mean? It just doesn't correlate.
It's just getting to know the players, getting to know their personalities. And that kind of leads into something that I love to talk about. And I'm very vocal about this on Twitter, but I feel like people are always like, when you see those videos, and this is like really prevalent in college football, but I think also in women's hockey, like when you see the players engaging with the camera on the ice or off the ice, people are always really curious, like, how do you do that? And I always say, like, when for stuff like that, the relationship comes first, and then the content comes second. And every time I saw you with the team, like, they all very much have a great friendship with you. Like, they have a very good relationship with you, but they also trust you.
Yes.
Can you kind of give the background on how you developed relationships with these players to the point where they feel comfortable with you in front of the camera, but also trust you to make sure that they're putting you in the best spot? Because I feel like a lot of athletes are scared of the media, are scared of the camera. They don't want to be exposed. A lot goes behind the scenes to develop that relationship, so they know that, you know, when there's a camera, that if it's you're their guy.
Yes.
How do you develop those relationships and foster that for it to benefit your content?
The first thing that I thought of as soon as I signed with the team was to make sure I was at every single practice as much as possible, especially within that first month to 2 months of the season, because, like you were saying, a lot of times athletes, when they see cameras, it's just somebody that they've never seen before, just chucking a camera in their face. All right, thank you, bye. And then they're gone, right? Whereas my approach was, if they see me every single day, then I'm not just there just to get something from them and disappear.
Yeah.
I'm there, yes, we're going to be shooting content every so often, but it's also just for
familiarity's sake. Yes.
1000, because that's how you're able to develop that rapport. You know, we're giving high fives, we're asking, what'd you get for, what's your favorite Tim's orders,
whatever,
like stuff like that,
yeah.
right? And then you're able to, it's kind of like that slow burn, because then over time, then you'll start to see that develop on camera. So whenever it is like we're doing, you know, partnerships, branding type of stuff, whereas it's something that I'm able to shoot for them, you'll notice that they're a lot more comfortable, because, like you said, they recognize you. Oh, yes. Oh, Juan's gonna shoot this for us. we're good.
Yeah.
No problem. Right. But I think a lot of times people are just so focused on trying to get as much content out as much as possible and forget that you also have to, they're still people. Yes, they're athletes. They're fantastic top tier athletes,
but they're people.
They're still people. So you have to be able to develop some form of rapport or relationship with them for them to be comfortable, because that will translate on camera.
100%.
Yeah.
Gonna pivot here really quickly, but a lot of your work with the PWHL wasn't just with the Leafs. Sorry, I'm in full preseason, but wasn't. I mean, you guys are gonna come up with a name soon, so you can't give any tidbits on the podcast.
Cannot.
Probably on an NDA and under an NDA or something. But PWHL Toronto, you weren't just working with the Toronto team. You were also working with the league. And again, like, it takes a village. So when you sign the contract, you're also working for the league. So not only are you covering your games, but you're going out for the playoffs. You're going to these bigger events like the Scotiabank game, the Montreal game,
the Pittsburgh game.
And you have, Kane from Ottawa coming here. And you have, like, everyone is it's a very collaborative environment where everyone is pushing towards the same thing. What was that experience like, working not just at the team level, but at the league level? Because I've been in both environments, and I know that it's two very different, very different, like, asks from team to league. Like, your content for the team is way more personality driven, way more emotional connection, versus your asks from the league are way more coming from a marketing standpoint, way more like, we want to promote this game, What was how did you find that kind of, you'd have one game in the middle of the season where you're technically with the team, but you're also coming, with the PWHL full team with Kaylee and all those people. What was that experience like to work both sides of the coin?
On my end personally, I had a great time. Like, obviously, like you're saying, you definitely, there's a delicate balance of what you're trying to figure out and shoot, but the common goal is understood, right? And I think that allows everyone to get onto the same page very, very quickly. And then we can have a lot more of an open discussion as to what should be done, when can we do it, what are, like, the timelines, what is reasonable. And then also too, like, they were awesome in kind of like being collaborative with us to be like, if there was an idea that had to be shot or executed, we were also able to kind of like give feedback where something might not work, or be like, this is going to be fantastic, but how about if we did it this way instead, right?
It's collaborative. Everyone's 1,000%. There for the same objective. Everyone wants the league and the whatever event you're at to win, to sell out, to have fans, for everyone to have fun.
Yes. And I think we were able to get a very good balance of that, especially on the league side. Like, Kane and I were able to go and shoot.
Shout out Kane in Ottawa.
Yeah.
Shout out Kaner.
We were able to go and shoot the like the finals as well in Minnesota. And he did the Boston games as well. And for that, we were just there to support for sure. Yeah. But then also to try to think of anything that the two main teams didn't get a chance to either think of or execute and go and do that, right? So I think when
you guys are the role players, you guys are, you need me on the fourth line to plug up a hole and just get content. Great. If you need me to slide up to the top line and play a bigger capture role, edit something big, like, you guys are kind of there as, jack of all trades, like, role players.
And that's where that kind of like it takes a village concept kind of comes in, because you really have to know your role. And it's not an ego thing. It's not like, not that we don't think you're good enough or we think you're better than this person. It's like, what do we need to get done? And everyone's like, you need it? Okay, we'll get it done. Right? Yeah.
You mentioned ego there, and I just my last episode of the podcast with two friends of mine, Erica and Paul, they talked a lot about, like, a way to succeed in this industry is like leaving your ego at the door, like being welcoming and friendly to everyone. And when you're in a collaborative environment like that, you have to do that. But I think it's also a lot more, I don't want to use the word difficult, but it's a lot more nuanced when you have so many different people from different creative backgrounds and experiences coming in to one thing. Like, like, Kane's been shooting hockey a long time. And then, you may, I don't know what the other teams were like, but you may have people who are less experienced, more experienced. How do you, like, kind of foster an environment in that situation where everyone leaves their ego at the door and works together? Because, like, people in this industry can develop egos and it can be tough. How do you kind of, like, foster an environment with other creatives in these spaces that come in very types of experience, very types of personalities. How do you mesh and work together, especially when you guys are only doing it a handful of times a year?
I think there's a few things to that. I think obviously number one, be a nice person, because it's
crazy that we have to say that.
Yeah, I know.
I say it every episode, like every video, be a good person. Like,
no, it's true.
It's true though, but like I'm just shocked by the amount of times I say to people like, what's the best thing you can do? Just be a good person. It's like, damn, boy.
Yes, because I think you start there because that only not only affects how people interact with you, but even more so how you interact with people. Because I've gone to arenas and gotten cussed out by, team photographers.
That's the worst.
And like, just
if you're
for
a
no
team
reason.
photographer for any sports team, you're listening to this, don't be a dick. Just be a good person. I'm not calling anyone out, but like, be Heather. Heather is such a loving person, but like, continue on what you were going to say.
No, but yeah, like you have to, I think if you approach it that way, then that keeps your focus on your enthusiasm about being there.
Yeah.
Not so much about, okay, this is my spot. I signed up for the spot. Oh. Like, no. I think that kind of also gives you a lot more, reminds you to be a lot more flexible.
Yes.
Because
you have to
flexibility
You have to
is key in order for you to do your job well. And I think those are like the two like main things that when you're in like those big collaborative environments, because like you said, a lot of times it's like the first or second time where you're meeting some of these people, or the first time you're all kind of like working on one collaborative project. So you have to try your best to kind of like fit in where you can and understand this is not the hill for you to like to die on. Like,
if you don't get your glass spot for the second period, you can find somewhere else.
Yes.
You don't have to, you're not going to miss anything. You're shooting from the 200s, or you got to
1,000%.
Yeah. And I think people kind of get like, they kind of forget that like when you work for an organization, I guess it's different when you work for like, this is like a very specific thing, but like working for like a photo organization like CP or like Getty, like you have one job and that's it. But when you work for a league or a team, like you are the sum of your parts. Like,
yes,
just like you should be just as happy if we're both shooting the same game and I missed the goal and you get it. I should be happy for you. Yeah. Of course, I'm gonna be pissed off because I want to get the shot. But like, as long as one of us gets it, we can post it. That's what matters. And it was crazy that we would be shooting like the Scotiabank game specifically, but also the playoffs. It's like the amount of messages that were sent in like our WhatsApp of who got that, who got that. Gosh. And just like every single time one of you, me, Nicole, or
like we had Benji, Brennan,
we had like 7 cameras. And as long as someone gets it, that's what matters. Because at the end of the day, we just need to post it. So it's good to hear that like that was the main mindset. It's just like you are not doing this for you.
Yes.
And that's the thing. It's like you're working for an organization. The organization is not, you are not bigger than that.
No.
Just because you didn't get your Instagram clip doesn't mean it's the end of the world. You're also going to keep shooting more games. I want to touch on something you mentioned here, and this is going to get maybe into a deeper topic in a second, but you mentioned like, sometimes you have those team photographers or just people who don't want to give up their space or are kind of abrasive. They've been there for a while, and you've dealt with it, I've dealt with it, and I'm not really wanting to call out any specific sect of people, but people can read between the lines here.
Yeah.
But there are people in these environments who are very much like, either are I've been there for so long, this is my spot, giving you that bullshit, and then they're rude about it. But there's also just people with ego who don't want to like work along, not in your team specifically, but like other people. How do you deal with that? Because I know for me, it's happened to me a lot in hockey and in other sports. Like there's someone who's always going to give you grief because, oh, that's my spot, I've been there forever, or you got in my way, but like everyone's there for the same reason. How do you deal with confrontations like that? Because it's actually something I've never really talked about on this channel, but like someone is not being nice to you.
Yeah.
They're cussing you out, they're giving you grief. What do you do?
Listen, I have figured out a very, very long time ago. Also, I'm a little bit older, so that also might play into it. But
a wise old sage.
Yeah.
He's an old dog, but he got lots of tricks. You know what I'm saying?
I have figured out that even though I'm having an abrasive encounter with someone, that might not be that point of the day. There might have been a lot of lead up to the point where now they're coming at me.
Someone might have pissed in their cereal. You don't know.
You don't know, right? So
it's a really good way of looking at it.
Yeah. So how I have been able to kind of like navigate those situations is be polite. Because at the end of the day, you will not be able to tell anybody that I was disrespectful to you in any way, shape, or form. Because I think when you're coming into whether it's a rink or whatever new like environment that you're not necessarily the point person for, I think if you're able to approach it humbly and politely, even if that person is not going to be the nicest, you'll still be able to either A, do your job properly, or B, figure out who you need to talk to in order to do your job properly.
Yeah, it's just like, if you're not going to, look, I'm sorry, this is my spot. Then you go to the people who can help you out.
Yeah, exactly. And then you avoid the ego clash of, oh, well, who do you think you are? It's like, no problem. Cool. You're here today. All good. I'll go back and chat with my point person or whoever was able to connect you to get, whether it's a media pass or something like that. There's always someone else that can. You
don't want to look like a bozo next to someone who's making themselves look a bozo, right? Yeah.
No, it's not. It's never, ever worth it. And I have been in plenty arenas that I have not necessarily been the status quo of the environment. So that kind of doubles down on being able to leave a good impression, because the next time you show up, then the experience is that much better.
Yes. Yeah. So I want to that's the topic I want to talk about, the status quo. And I'm going to be very frank here, because I think you and I share this experience in similar ways. I think another thing that kind of adds to that, people will kind of treat you differently, is that, you're a Black videographer. Yeah. You are someone from a very distinct cultural background who, if we're being very honest, and there's nothing wrong with this, is not very prevalent in hockey. Yeah. I feel it too. I'm Hispanic. I have the privilege of being Caucasian facing. Like, you look at me, I'm like, I'm not dark skinned. Yeah. But you hear my name, Juan, and they're like, he's Mexican, Latino, whatever. Yeah. I usually get Mexican, and I'm like, no, I'm Colombian. But anyways, we have that distinct kind of visibility difference from a lot of people, because, like, let's face it, a lot of the people who are covering hockey are white people, and there's nothing wrong with that. Very talented white people, for sure. There's nothing wrong with it. However, we do have that distinct difference, and it's really interesting, because I really never get to talk about that with anybody, because all my colleagues are very like white, blah blah blah. You're one of the very few people who work in hockey and are a person of color. How does that impact either the way you think people treat you or the way you have to carry yourself? Like, do you feel like there's a little pressure that you have to act a certain way in a hockey rink, or do you not really care and just like, fuck it, I am who I am? Like, what's the question I'm trying to ask, being a Black creative, what's it like working in a sport like hockey, which is predominantly not a very culturally diverse one, on and off the ice?
It will, there's a few different ways to answer that question. I think, predominantly, if I've ever gone to a rink for the first time, I kind of have to like prep myself before I get into an arena. Not that I'm anticipating a negative interaction of any kind, but because like, for example, if I'm like, I don't know, in North Bay or Sudbury or something like that,
super white town,
it's going to be very, very obvious that that I'm not necessarily from that area, right? So I think it's more so on me, as you would be a visitor in any other city or in any new establishment, to be respectful, obviously, right? And I think when you're able to kind of like lead with that, then that kind of like makes the starting line a lot more positive for those kind of interactions, or if you're showing up to a rink for the first time, right? I think I did that all of last year. I think I went to eight different OHL arenas, and not all of them are in the GTA.
Like, and it's interesting, because the GTA, like, we'll go to a rink here and it's just like, GTA is diverse as hell. Yeah. But you go to the North Bays, the Sudburys, the whatever, middle of nowhere Ontario, like, then you're realizing it.
1000%. And I think also too, like, obviously after being, like a respectful visitor into those environments,
you're also there to do your job.
1000%. And how I'm able to show that I'm there to do my job is my enthusiasm. Yes. Right. I think when you're able to really show that you are genuinely there to have a good time, enjoy the game, and really get good stuff, not just for yourself, but for the team and some of the players that they can use. I think that kind of like supersedes any preconceived notions most of the time. Like, I haven't had any negative interactions in the last like little bit. But when I was growing up playing hockey, it's a little different, right?
Yeah.
But I think being able to kind of lead with those two things have really helped me. And also too, like we were talking about before, be able to develop that really good rapport, right? Because after you have a really good interaction for your first or second game, they're like, oh, hey, you were here a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, they recognize you.
Good to see you. Did you enjoy the game?
You become part of the club.
Exactly.
Yeah, so it's just putting on that first impression.
100%. And that, I know that first impression can also be very daunting, especially if you're in an industry or a certain sport that, you know, predominantly a portion of either the audience or the athletes don't look like you.
Yep.
Right? That can be a very daunting task and can be very uncomfortable. So that's why, you know, sometimes I gotta do a little hype up session in the car before I step
Some
out.
good tunes, you know?
Yeah, you know what I mean?
What's your pregame song in the car when you're driving to the rink before we keep going?
That's a great question.
You have to pick one.
If I had to,
You're like 3 minutes for the rink. It's the last song on the playlist. What are you putting on?
last song on the playlist, Goosebumps. Was that Travis Scott?
It's a great song.
Yeah.
It's a good song.
I think that's
fire.
That's usually pretty solid.
I think, again, something I don't really get to talk about with a lot of people on my channel, my podcast, but again, like being a visible minority in the sport. So I kind of want to go two ways about this. But number one, you just said, like, predominantly people in the sport and the fans and the people working in the sport don't look like you or I, or they don't sound like you or I. How do you kind of make sure we talked about the whole being like good first impressions, but how do you in your head get past that point and realize that, like, despite where you're from, what you look like, that you belong there, especially in a sport like hockey where it's been an up and down history of the sport with people of the different cultures. How do you push yourself to believe that you belong in a sport like this, despite not seeing many people like you? Because I'll give you an example. Growing up, I never saw a Latino playing hockey.
Yeah.
Like, I can count them on my hands. Scott Gomez, Max Pacioretty, and Austin Matthews.
Yes.
3. And I've been watching hockey for 26 years. I was like 20 years. I've been like serious hockey fan. I've seen three of my people. You can count the number of black hockey players
1,000%.
currently in the NHL and probably all time in the NHL on your hands, and, you know, a little bit more. How do you kind of put yourself in the position to succeed and feel comfortable in a space where historically we're not really seen in the sport or out, like, alongside the athletes?
I think how I like to approach it is be professional. Like, as long as you're professional, you can stand on your proof of work, and also how you carry yourself allows you to be in those rooms and in those settings, right? I think obviously there's sometimes you do gotta like pump yourself up a little bit and remind yourself that you are supposed to
belong there.
Yes. But I think also too, to kind of like pair with that, like remind, like you can, like we were talking earlier, you gotta look at where you've come from to also like realize, okay, boom, you built this brick by brick, bro. You built this shit brick by brick. 1,000%. And I think when you're able to really appreciate that and appreciate how long or whatever the journey was that you had to get to that specific spot, allows you to be a lot more confident in those rooms, but also to believe that you should be in those rooms as well, because you have earned that spot. You know what I mean? I think being able to really kind of like double down on that has been something that has helped me along the way. Because as I said, I have been in plenty rooms where I have been the one person of color on the staff or the one person of color in the arena. Right. And that once again, you have to remind yourself, I have earned the right to be here.
No handouts. I built this.
No way there's any handouts.
No, especially not when you're like from a very diverse culture.
Yes.
What I want to kind of, before we move on from this topic, just again, I love the fact that we're able to have this conversation. Did you see the photo at the Olympics of all the photographers that was kind of going around?
Yes.
Because it was, unfortunately, and I'm sorry, all white guys, like
Yes.
with a mix of like 3 girls.
Yes.
How and so when that came out, I really had to think about it, because when you think of the athletes at the Olympics, a lot of like, it's not it like the Olympics specifically. We're going to shift to a big perspective. The Olympics is a worldwide event.
Yeah.
Every country and culture in the world, to a degree, is represented at these games. You could argue that if you take every single athlete, the majority of the athletes actually probably aren't white, because you got a load of countries in Africa.
Yes.
You have all the Latin countries, and you have Asian. It's a very diverse field of athletes, and I really do believe in the concept of like the people telling the stories and capturing the content should reflect who you're capturing. And I do want to preface this: there is no shade with anyone who is white or whatever and at the Olympics, because if you're there, I believe you deserve to be there. I don't care if you're 65 and been doing it for 10 years, or if this is your first time. You like, that's the, like, just like the athletes deserve to be there, the creatives and people telling the stories have to be there. But that being said, with such a diverse field of athletes at an event like this, and to see the disparity in the people covering the event, how important do you think is representation, not just on the field, but in the creative and in the people taking photos, making videos, telling those stories? How important is visibility in that space, and how would you want to see that grow?
It's huge. Like, I think when you're able to kind of, I think being able to have everything equitable is still a very much work in progress. But if that is the mindset of trying to have the sport or that industry reflect not even just the athletes, but the audience, right? Like,
that's fair. I didn't even think about the audience.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you'll find a lot more of a diverse audience for a lot of these sports than necessarily the athletes, right? So I think being able to understand that and make that more of the like the idea in the forefront allows you to, this kind of like starts from the top down as well. It's very much a trickle down effect in terms of the people making those decisions also have to make that a priority.
Yes.
Right. And I think then when you're able to make that a priority, then that kind of trickles down to, the creative and then, or like managers reaching out to more diverse creatives to come on to projects to
be involved.
Content. Yes. And I think on the flip side, on our end, on the creator side, is to, if you're into rock climbing, find a rock climbing gym in your area. Go and shoot it. Just say, hey, I'm sure you probably have a membership for this specific example, but if it's a place that you normally go to, like, hey, I've got a camera. Is it okay if one day I come in and shoot some stuff, right? I think a lot of times we also have to push ourselves to be outside of that comfort zone to then be able to now, kind of like put a flag in the ground, but like more of us should be in this industry.
Yeah.
Right. And I think it's a collective thing from the people hiring and creating those jobs, and also the people actually making the content and being the creatives that are bringing those ideas to life, right? That's kind of like how I got into it. It's very easy. I've been in a million basketball gyms. A million. And
probably a million more to come.
Yes. But what I started to also remember is that I grew up playing hockey. Like, that was the first sport I watched on television, Hockey Night in Canada on CBC. And that was the first sport that I had love and passion for. So yes, it was daunting in the sense of I couldn't tell you anyone that looked like me that was shooting hockey. Right. But on the flip side of it, it's like, goes back to what we were talking before. I was like, but I have such a love for the game.
Yes.
Why not try?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I think then I was able to start reaching out to different teams, like, or for media passes, like, hey, can I come out and shoot a game? Like, yeah, come on.
Yeah. And that's all it takes.
Yeah. And I think that was also a little bit of a roadblock in my mind, because because it is something outside of our comfort zone, it sounds a lot harder than it actually is.
Yeah.
Right? Because you're like, well, I've never done this before.
It's like talking like a stranger in public. It's really intimidating. And then you do it and you're like, oh, that was relatively easy.
Exactly. Right? Because I used to psych myself out about even just like applying for media passes. I'm like, there's no way. I'm like, I'm probably gonna have to have like this whole portfolio. Maybe I won't send it to the right person. But then one day I just showed up to a game. I was able to literally sign my name on a sheet, leave a business card, and go shoot the game.
Yeah.
Like I was flabbergasted as to how easy it was as compared to how I had built it up in my head. So it's a lot of like getting out your comfort zone stuff for sure.
Yeah, that's awesome. Really well said. I want to pivot now a little bit towards what you just talked about. Thank you for being so open and candid about, you know, being a diverse individual in sports and being a creator. Like it's interesting when you get to have these discussions, because a lot of what you said resonated with me. Like, I grew up watching Hockey Night in Canada on CBC. I never really saw anyone like that. I never really saw anyone like me. Even like, dude, when I shoot the Stanley Cup final and I look around, I'm like,
it's just you.
It's like me and like three other people. Like, you know, it's crazy. But no, I just appreciate your transparency with that. Anyways, I want to shift gears here really quickly.
Yeah.
You just talked about how you started to get passes for your early kind of onset sports career with the OHL. Two things I want to touch on this topic. Number one is the importance of just asking.
Yeah.
And putting yourself out there, because the amount of, and I'm sure you get this question now as you've built your own brand and you built your own following as a sports creator. How do you get media passes? How do you get access? Who do I talk to? And a lot of people don't realize, like, you just got to ask. So 100%. How important, like, you know, you just kind of talked about it, but if you want to touch on a little more on the topic, like, how important is it just to shoot your shot and be like, hey, this is what I do. I want to give you this. Can I come shoot for you? How important is it just to ask?
It is very important. I would say also to like a caveat to that is ask genuinely.
Yes.
Because
don't just be like, can I get a media pass?
Yes. Because if you're like that, imagine how many other people have also just sent the same type of message or email or text. You have to
stand out.
You have to be able to stand out, but also to, as I said throughout this entire chat so far, is that you have to show your enthusiasm. If they believe that you are are truly jazzed to be there, there's a higher likelihood that you will be able to A, get in, B, get a lot better access than you should be allowed to, and C, be able to really develop relationships that you'll be able to go back to over time. And that's kind of like how I did. Like I was working at MLSC at the time, so full time, like you at NHL, so full time gig all day editing, right? One day I sat down and figured out, okay, there are 8 teams within an hour to an hour and a half drive from my house. So how many of those games can I get to? Right. And then I just started looking at the calendar and seeing, okay,
there's a process to this.
There's a huge process.
If you want it, you got to really want it, and you got to work for it.
1000%. And you know, it's like,
that shows the enthusiasm. You're literally getting a map, being like, where can I go? I have these dates. How can I do it?
1000%. And I was able to do that. But also too, like there were a couple games that I had technically signed up on the website, got there, they're like, your name's not here. But I'm like, well, I've got my camera gear, I've got my business cards, like I'm here to shoot the game. Can I still get in? And like, give us a second. There's a call, there's a phone call. All right, we'll get you in today. Here's what you need to do. Next time you come back, this is the person you need to talk to.
Beautiful. So and now you have the route.
Exactly.
You never know until you ask.
1000%.
And if they say no, There's another team somewhere else.
Yes. And also, once again, I did that for free. Like no one was paying me to go and do that. Like
you wanted it for the experience, the reps.
Exactly. And even like, was it 2022? I was able to like, this is when that started, like going to OHL games and stuff like that. I was able to go out to the championship semifinal and championship game of the Memorial Cup out in St. John. And I was able to reach out to...
You want to talk about places you won't see anyone like you.
Hey, man.
That's St. John, baby.
Hey.
Out east.
Yes, indeed. Like, thankfully, I had a few friends out there that I was able to, like, stay with.
It's just funny that we're talking about desolate Ontario communities with no people of color. And then we're like, oh, I went to St. John's to shoot hockey.
Yes.
Like, if you don't know where St. John's is, it is somewhere that way.
Yeah, 100%. And that was, I literally just sent out an email to the marketing director, like, hey, I saw that there's still like the media pass availability is still up on the website. Am I able to get down there? I will go. Like, you guys don't have to pay me. I just want to be able to have a pass to get out there and shoot. And thankfully, in that email, I was able to, like, be polite, be respectful,
offer value,
and be enthusiastic about just being there, just getting to be there. And everything I shot, don't get me wrong, I don't think I've been that lucky in a very, very long time of just getting every single moment. And then as soon as I touched down for the semifinal game, my flight was delayed. I missed,
everything was going great until
I missed the first 2 periods of the semifinal game.
Holy!
But I was still able to find the marketing director, just to also, one thing that a lot of times people forget: go and shake someone's hand. It's very old school, I know,
but it's like just that face-to-face interaction.
Yes, just to have that face-to-face interaction.
And also, we're talking old school. I don't know about the person you met, but a lot of people in power and have influencing decisions are probably from an older crowd. Like,
yeah, you know,
just go and fucking give them a nice little
1,000% say,
nice
hey,
little
how's it going, right? And I think that also
don't dap them up.
Yes, no, it depends on the crowd.
If I see Akim, I'm dapping him up, not shaking his hand. But if I see Joe Smith, it's a nice little
exactly. And I think that like as I was saying earlier, I was able to then get the access I was allowed to, but then also to be able to get on the ice. I was as we were talking about folks of color, I was the one person of color on the ice for the Memorial Cup. Also, the one of 3 video people on the ice, and there was like another like 20 photographers. So you got to figure out what the niche is gonna look like, right?
But it's interesting because I think video is getting way more priority these days across sports versus
1,000%.
photo. Nothing against photographers; they're very much needed, and that is an art in itself. But I think videos finally, like, there's a value behind it because all social media is becoming more video. So it's just like you have 3 videos, but you guys are arguably 3 of the most important people to capture that moment.
Yes, and then like you couldn't beat that moment, being able to capture
Hamilton
St. John.
Oh, we won at home.
Yes,
the Dogs.
Being able to watch the home team win the Memorial Cup and all of the reaction that comes with that, like,
it's special.
And then once again, as we were saying, like, then there was a follow up. So when I went back home, I was able to put the little recap together. I was like, hey, thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to come out. This is what I put together. If you want to take a look, feel free. If not, once again, thank you for the chance. They saw that, and then the next season, I was able to go and shoot the top prospects game, and that
came from working for free.
Yes.
So that's what I want to pivot to or segue into. I'm really starting to sound like a podcaster using the word segue. I want to segue to you working for free really quickly as we wrap up here.
Yeah.
Now, we work in kind of 2 different fields. We work in the sports content industry, but we also work in the film industry. And I feel like working for free has this really taboo thing of you shouldn't work for free. You know you're valuable. And I think that's very true in the film and entertainment industry that, you and I have dabbled in a little bit with people like Nicole and Kofi and whatnot. But when you work in sports, it's a little different because you kind of have to you're going to have to do that for free. You're going to have to shoot games for free.
Yeah.
You're going to have to create content for free. Now, I think there's a difference between like making 1 or 2 pieces like you did and then maybe with a team trying to take advantage of you, but that's a whole other topic.
Yeah.
What I want to focus on is how do you view the concept of doing this free work? Because the way I actually look at it, if I'm going to shoot a sporting event for free, it's kind of like a spec.
Yes.
You know, like I did that with Canada Soccer. I just asked, hey, I want to provide value for you guys. If there's any way I can help you guys, and they just let me come. And I made them very similar like you. Made them a video, and then that comes from there. But I did it initially for $0.
Yeah.
What would you say to somebody who maybe is a little hesitant on taking free work, but really is struggling to take that next step in their sports creative career?
I would say it's got to make sense. So like, for example,
absolutely.
So like, for example, I'm very big on niche sports.
Oh yeah.
Right. Because, a lot of times there is a lot more leeway in terms of they're like, yeah, sure. Come on out. But then also too, on the flip side of it, I think you also have to look at the free work as more so an opportunity for you to hone your skills, right? So for example, if you want to work for Canada Soccer, but
you don't have soccer in your portfolio,
in your portfolio, or then maybe Canada Soccer might not be the first ask, but then you can be like, okay, we've got a CPL team or a NWSL team, or like a
minor league,
like a D2 or a minor league, or even honestly, your local like house league.
And this is how you can get started.
Yeah.
If you've never done it before, go and shoot for free at your local soccer field, football field, lacrosse field, squash pitch. I don't care.
Yeah.
Go shoot water polo for free, but like just doing it for free, getting that first one under your belt.
Yes.
It's important.
Like, no word of a lie. Like, I used a men's league basketball hype reel along with that Memorial Cup recap as part of my application for MLSE. Right? And
you can end the podcast right there.
Right. So I was then able to leverage that stuff. So don't look at it so much as, oh, well, they're not paying me, or they're not paying me what I feel I should be paid. Make sure the opportunity makes sense. If you want to get into sports, or you want to get into surfing, you want to get into like motor sports of some kind, there's always going to be, if there's like a mountaintop league or athlete, there are going to be lower divisions.
You got to climb the ladder.
Yeah, or smaller organizations that'll be a lot more appreciative of the work, which then...
And might need the work more.
Exactly.
It's like everyone wants to shoot the NHL or the PWHL. But like, we got a lot of resources. We got a lot of people. And if you come to us, like, you might not be our first option because the PWHL has their list of people.
Yeah.
The NHL has their list of people. But you can go to the O. You can go to the OJHL, smaller leagues, who would love the marketing content and don't really have anyone to do it. And number one, that doesn't mean that you're not only are you going to get more access, which is huge, because like, people don't realize when you get to the pro level of sports, PWHL, NHL, like there are certain places you can and cannot go.
You cannot go.
There are places you cannot go. Like, you can't just go to, so it's not just like working for free gets you opportunity, but like in an NHL rink or even the PWHL, when we did the bigger games, you can't just go sit on the glass like you would. But when I did Ryerson, or when you did, like Brody League stuff, or when you did OHL stuff, you can kind of go wherever you want for the most part. And that also gives you the opportunity to get really good stuff in places where you won't be able to get in the pro level. People are like, I want to shoot the NFL. I'm like, that's great, but you're gonna have to sit in one spot the entire game.
Exactly. And what you want is the access.
Yes.
So it's, don't look at, so for example, well since we're hockey, I'll use the hockey analogy. So for every one NHL team that might be in your local area, there are now maybe 1 or 2 AHL teams. If you have 1 or 2 AHL teams, they probably have another
for the East Coast League.
Yeah, ECHL team. And if they don't have that, then now you're going into major junior university sports, where it's a lot easier to get.
That's how I got my start, was TMU. You know, like, it's either like you can start it. You don't have to start. If you don't want to shoot your local, that's fine. If you don't want to shoot house league, don't be afraid to do major junior, college, or even like AAA. Like,
yes.
you know, like you don't have to shoot. Like,
you're just trying to get the access, because the thing is, if you can make a 15-year-old look like a pro, then what's going to happen when they give you the opportunity with pro athletes, right? And I think people, a lot of times we forget that what we're actually looking for is the access to the athletes. And what you'll find is if you start there, the teams will appreciate it a lot more. The athletes, remember, we're now in an era of personality and athlete driven content, right? So every athlete, university athlete's got at least a TikTok page, an Instagram page, a YouTube channel, and something else. If you're then now being able to create stuff for them to use, you can do collabs, you can get tagged, you can get those posts shared where they'll have a ton more traction on those. And then you can start building, like, for example, like a gondola page where you can like, this is what my content is reaching.
Shout out Gondola.
You know what I mean? So it's yes, we all want to work for the pros, but understand that if you can make pro level work for a quote unquote lower tier organization, then that once again boost your credibility, of being able to now transfer those skills to a quote unquote professional team.
It's like playing sports. It's like, look at someone like Connor Bedard who tore up the CHL, like, and then they were like, if this guy can do this at the junior level, what would he do at the pro level? And now he's unbelievable. But like, it's the same concept. Like, and I think there are so many people who I've talked to that kind of relay that, like people who shoot high school, like if you can make high school sports look like a professional sport, like wait until like light just went out over there, which means we're wrapping up anyways. Yeah. But yeah, no, I totally agree with that. In terms of the access, in terms of doing it for free, building your portfolio, I think that's a really, really great way of answering that question. Pause for a second. I'm gonna see if you got any questions. Sure. If not, we will wrap up because I know you gotta jip.
Yeah, man.
Get out of here. Righty. Okay, we do have a handful, so I'll try.
Oh, sure. Okay.
Yeah, we have a handful here.
Gotcha.
We'll try to get this done as soon as possible.
Gotcha. I'm just extending this parking so I don't lose any money.
Yeah, cool. Just making sure my guy doesn't get a parking ticket, because then that falls onto the podcast budget, which is currently zero. Sorry for the darkness, folks, but we're just gonna wrap this up this way. All right. First is actually not a question. It's a compliment from our guy Brendan Suni Media.
My guy.
No question. Just let Akim know he's the PWHL GOAT. Shout out Brendan. You're the PWHL GOAT.
My guy, Brendan.
From G Lewis Media. Do you guys ever get bored / burnt out from shooting hockey all the time? Yes.
1000%. And also, I think you had one, and also Nicole had a great video on her YouTube channel of understanding when you have to like give yourself some creative room to just breathe.
Yes.
Right. And what I like to do is, if you like I love the Raptors, and then as soon as I started working for MLSC, I was like, I do not want to see a Raptors game ever, because you're just looking at the same stuff all the time. It's almost like trauma. It's like you don't want to deal with it, right? So
trauma.
Yeah,
that's working in sports.
Yeah,
trauma.
So I think if you're able to balance it, like for example, if you're a big, let's say basketball, football person, then try something different. Like maybe if you're in a local running club, try doing something for your local running club, right? Because then you remove the pressure of it being like a work or paid position, and then it just kind of like allows you to just kind of see what works. If it works, it works. If not, hey, you had a good time trying. And you kind of move on. But yeah, you definitely have to balance that for sure.
Yeah, I'm gonna just say something else here too before we go on to the next question. I think it's really important to diversify the sports you shoot. Number one, because you will get tired of it. I love hockey. I will shoot hockey until the day I die. Funny enough, it's not my favorite sport to shoot. It's actually football. But I think you have to diversify the sports you shoot, because it actually makes you a better overall cinematographer, videographer in the sports scene. Because I will shoot a football game, and then I'm like, how can I take this perspective and do it in a hockey game?
Yeah.
Or I might do something in basketball and be like, it just gives you a different perspective on how to shoot sports. And also like it gets you creatively reinvigorated. I shot the Indy this year. And I've shot
Which
it,
was great.
which is, yeah, it was awesome. But it's like such a refreshing thing to do a new sport every once in a while. Like, especially when you like halfway through a season and you got this creative block, because I've shot like 100 hockey games or whatever. Like, you need that boost. Like, go shoot another sport. Like, it really helps, especially when you get burnt out.
Yes.
Next question. We're just going to do 2 more here. From Sterling, and it's spelled kind of interesting, but from Sterling. Would you rather shoot on the glass or elevated? Elevated. I love shooting on the glass. This is I'll do mine while you think.
Yeah.
I love shooting on the glass, but I will say this right now. If you are starting off and you want to get as many highlights for your portfolio as possible, don't spend all your time on the glass, because even though you have the front row seat, sometimes you won't get a good angle. Sometimes the ref might get in your way. Sometimes, it's moving way too fast. From an elevated position, I rarely miss shots. During the Stanley Cup final, most of my best shots were elevated, because I didn't miss the highlight. That Connor McDavid assist where he dangled through everyone, I don't get that if I'm by the glass. Like, I might, but you're risking a lot more. So I think if you're trying to build a reel of your best shots, elevated. Shooting by the glass is awesome, but a lot of people sleep on an elevated position.
I have like a caveat on that. So depends on the rink.
100%. That's very true. I'm thinking like NHL rinks.
Yes, because some rinks you're able to kind of like zip around very, very easily. If it is something like that, then I tend to kind of like go glass. Like in one period, I'll like
do as many. Yes. Yeah, like change it up.
Yes, I'll go glass. I'll go
like 100
concourse level, and I'll kind of like bounce around different angles, whatever. However, for example, if you're just starting and you have, like, for example, you'll have like 1 or 2 lenses. What I like to do is in the warm-ups, I'll go, because depending on the arena, sometimes the glass is a little murky. However, if you don't have a mist filter,
it's diffusion.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's a free way for you to still be able to create the effects, especially for a lot of those like ISO shots and close-ups. Like when they're doing a little shoot around, they'll be up against the corner of the glass.
Yeah.
You can get nice shots of the helmet, of the name. Like a great example of that. Shameless plug. If you go and see the video that I did of the Oshawa Generals and
you're gonna have to give me this so I can put it on as you go.
Yes, there is like I shot all of the warm-up stuff through the glass, and you'll see it's so smooth and like kind of like mystified, but that's because the glass was a little fogged up.
It's funny because when I shoot an NHL or PWHL game, the glass is beautiful. Like you can see right through that thing. But when I shoot Ryerson games, TMU games, or anything at like the Mattamy, the glass is beat up. Like you've seen it. It's a little beat up. It's chunky. Hey, if you're Bobby from the rink, can we please just clean the glass? I love you, Bobby. But like it does give you those sparkles and those little bits. I also do want to say just before, like just a little thing. Warm-ups are a really good place to shoot on the glass because you will get so many beautiful shots, and it's a really good way to build a reel. Do not sleep on shooting warm-ups.
Yes.
Last question, and we got to wrap up here. From Bernie JP Vids.
My guy, Bernie.
Hey, Bernie, shout out for you, Buffalo Sabres this year. Kid made it to the show.
Nice.
Bernie, you got to get you on the pod. What is your greatest in-game memory you've captured? I'll let you go first.
My greatest in-game memory.
Yes.
I've got 3. I've got the winning goal for Memorial Cup.
Who was it?
I think it was Dufour. Yeah, I think it was Dufour that scored that winning goal. The winning goal from Natalie Spooner on the breakaway against Minnesota. I think it was like a May 6th game.
Was that is playoffs or regular?
No, regular season. That was one of the most that is one of the most fantastic things I've ever captured in my entire life. Thankfully, I was at 120 frames because it looks fantastic. And I think the third thing would be the it wasn't an overtime goal, but it was a late game goal, playoffs. I think it was game 2 at home. It was like a stalemate 0-0, and then Renata Fast throws one on net from the blue line, chips in off of Jesse Comfort, and the place goes nuts.
Awesome. I'll give you 3 and then we'll wrap up here. All 3 of the Stanley Cup finals I've been at, like,
Yes.
I can't pick one. Like, there's one specific memory in Colorado. I remember Cale Makar with his dad. He gives his dad the cup. And it's not even like, it wasn't even Gabe Landeskog or anyone lifting the cup. It was Cale gave it to his dad. His dad lifts the cup over his head with Cale. His dad puts the cup down and starts crying. And I was just like, man, like, that's what it's all about. You know, it's not even like a goal. It's just like the emotions that come with it. So like the 3 Stanley Cup finals for sure. And that's a specific memory I'll never forget. The second one for me, not a highlight particularly. I'll have to give a highlight at some point. But when I shot Canada Soccer qualifying for Paris last year, it's a single shot of the greatest soccer player of all time, Christine Sinclair,
The GOAT.
subbing on, and it's just her. It's like a tunnel, and you see her coming on, putting on the armband, like angry, like she's like. She got that dog in her.
Yeah.
Again, not a highlight, but like growing up as a Canadian, like she's the GOAT.
Yes.
She's like one of the, arguably the greatest Canadian athlete. I think I don't know. You could talk about Wayne all you want,
Yeah,
but like,
yeah.
yeah. But that was
close.
number 2. And number 3, honestly, this is a recent one. Matthew Tkachuk saving the puck on the line. I was right in the corner.
Yes.
As that happened in game 5, and he slides and gets the puck. Again, not a crazy highlight, but I just remember like that whole moment happening in slow motion in my mind. I could not believe he got it off the puck, and then McDavid gets it, scores, and they win the game. Like, just a ridiculous series of events.
1000%.
Those are definitely my 3 memories. All right, you got to get out of here. So one more thing, and then we will sign off.
Yes.
I ask this to everyone as we finish the podcast. What is the number 1 piece of advice you would give to someone who is just starting off, wants to get into your position, wants to shoot hockey? What's the number 1 piece of advice you would give them?
I would say figure out like what we were talking about before. Figure out, okay, if you have a local team that you want to shoot for, figure out what the divisions that they have under that, because there's always going to be a farm system to that team. And then on the flip side of that, if you're really just like, you're just taking your first camera out the box, find whether it's like a minor league, like a kids league, like a team. There's going to be a local team that you can go and shoot something for free, and really just double down on the ability to create something out of nothing, because that will help you start to get comfortable with, you know, how you set up your camera, your timing, what you're looking for, different angles. Okay, the glass hits this certain way. Okay, how do I have to get my white balance in this rink as opposed to another rink? And I think you're able to start generating contacts, because a lot of those contacts are how you get your next job.
Amazing. Fantastic answer, sir. It was a pleasure to have you on the show.
Thank you.
Where can the people find you? Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, Owl Parcel. Where can the people find you? Where can they follow you? Where can they send fan mail to? All fan mail goes to at Visuals by Dream on YouTube. It's Akim the Dream. Beautiful. Sir, thank you so much. Best of luck with the season this year. Thank you guys so much for watching episode 17 of the Sports Creative Showcase. If you guys enjoyed the episode, leave it a like, whether you're on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, whatever you listen to. Leave a comment, questions for Akim, questions for myself. Rate this on your podcasting platform, and we'll catch you guys next time. Peace.